Welcome to the Write Your Own Story podcast. I'm your host, Betsy Leonidas, and the founder of the Write Your Own Story company. Girl, I can tell you right now, you are definitely enough. Here we value service, sisterhood, connection, laughter, and that super genuine, keep it real, tell you like it is honesty. My hope is at the end of each episode, you realize you can do whatever it is you dream about and that you are not alone with what you struggle with. I'm hoping that you are snapping and clapping and hell yes in your way through each one of these episodes. So if this tracks with you, let's get started. I'm so glad you're here. All right, everyone. Welcome back to the latest episode of the Write Your Own Story podcast. I am so thrilled to be here today with Rachel Wonderland, who is kind of like, as we were talking off camera, is this incredible sort of melting pot of jack of all trades, which are my favorite kind of people. I love that we're going to talk about pivots. We're going to talk about evolution. We're going to talk about, kind of following your heart and going after what you want. So Rachel, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Rachel is also an excellent sport because in the podcasting world, we kind of brainstorm prior to recording what we want to talk about. And I just sat down with her 5 minutes ago. I was like, can I change it? And she's cool enough to be flexible because, we're going to talk about all things female entrepreneurship, what it means to be a coach, how to find the right coach. And I think that is all really, really important. We both have lived and learned a lot. So I'm really excited to share those with the female founders. But Rachel's career started in dementia care, which I just lost my father-in-law to dementia. And I know a lot of people are either struggling with the hardship of having people that they care about with it, or also genuinely concerned and want to prevent it. So I was like, can we dive a little bit more into that? And I think that would really serve the community as well. So Rachel, thank you for being so cool and rolling with my ADHD. And we're just gonna have a good time.
I like it. Great.
Awesome. Okay. So Rachel, would you mind just sharing your backstory? How did you get to be such a multifaceted gal?
I have always loved working with older adults. When I was 15, I started volunteering at a skilled nursing facility near me to get hours for National Honor Society. And I really loved it. And a friend of mine that I was volunteering with said, Rachel, you're really good at this. And I was like, what? And she said, it's like old people. And I said, is that a skill? She said, I think so. You should do that for a job. And I said, well, what kind of job is that? She said, I don't know. But at 15, it did have me thinking,
right?
Like, what does that mean? Right? What does it mean for me? So I went on to get my master's in gerontology. Eventually I have a bachelor's in psychology. Yeah. Went right to grad school after that for my master's. My first job out of grad school, my first job out of grad school was whatever random job I could find, even with a master's. And then after 12 months, got a job in my field, thanks to LinkedIn, when LinkedIn was good. I got it. It's not anymore. But when it was good back in the day, I got a job as a dementia care director and loved that job immediately. Started writing a blog called Dementia by Day, which is, of course, the name of my company now, on Tumblr. Mm-hmm. Writing on Tumblr, sharing those stories. And I had a lot of people say to me, this is so interesting, you should turn this into a book. And this was at a time when nobody was talking about dementia online. Yeah. Nobody was talking about it, especially about transitioning a loved one into a dementia care community. Nobody was talking about that. So for me to start highlighting really positive stories of working in memory care, I think was really unique. So I pitched this book idea. Yeah, I pitched the book idea around Johns Hopkins, said we're interested. By the time my first book was coming out, I was working in my third dementia care building and I got laid off.
Ugh, I've been laid off before too.
It sucks.
It sucks.
It feels like getting dumped.
But dumped for your brains, which makes no sense. It's economy. It's all sorts of things. It has nothing to do with your actual skills and ability, but man, it hurts.
And especially that job, I think it had actually more to do with my boss getting annoyed that I had a book coming out.
Ooh, they were jealous.
I think she was having a bit of jealousy about the book coming out, which was unfortunate, Yeah. Because I wasn't taking, if anything, it was sort of adding, I would think, to the collective vibe, right? But apparently not. So,
to the clout of the institution that you were working with, to be someone here is
One would think. But apparently not. So got laid off, went home, opened my laptop, went on Indeed, looked at it for 10 minutes, closed the laptop. I can't do this again. Like, I can't go work in another building and work for somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
I've always been an entrepreneur. I have always, like, as a kid, was always hustling on something, and, had all the lemonade stands
I
and
love that.
beyond, and was like, you know what? I'm going to do my own thing. Like, I'm going to do this thing that I've been sort of brainstorming on for a long time. I'm going to be a dementia consultant. And that job doesn't really exist.
I was just going to say that's so freaking brave to be like, not only am I going to go out on my own, I'm just going to create something that literally doesn't exist right now.
Doesn't exist. In fact, when I was 22 in grad school, we had to do interviews with somebody in our field. So I interviewed a geriatric doctor. So I'm a gerontologist, which is the study of aging. She's a geriatrician, which is a doctor who specializes in geriatrics, older adults. So I had this call with a geriatrician, and she's like, doing their interview, blah, blah, blah. And then she says, so what do you want to do after grad school? And I was like, well, what I'd really love to do is go to different communities and like help them build their brand and like design dementia care buildings and do interior design. And she scoffed at me. She said, that's not a job, and you'd have to be a doctor to do it anyway. And I remember like tears rolling down my face and just trying to not sound like I was crying on the phone.
Yeah.
And I got off the phone and I thought, oh my God, she's right. Like, I'm an idiot. This
voice in your head.
Yeah, like this job doesn't exist. Like, this isn't real. I'm making this up. I'm crazy. So finally, that voice is in my head even when I was like starting this business. And I remember being like, maybe this woman was right. Like, this job doesn't exist. Like, how? So despite that, right, my book was coming out. I had like a few months before the book came out. And I said to myself, okay, you know what? I'm going to supplement my, I was getting supplement my unemployment with a caregiving job. So I took on a caregiving job, taking care of a lady with dementia at her house. Yeah. And that plus the unemployment made up enough that I, at like whatever I was, like 26, 27 years old, that I could cobble together enough of a living to start building the dementia consulting business on the side, right? As my one day to be my main thing. So I started putting myself out there and slowly but surely started getting, the clout, right, that I needed, and like the things that I needed to like get to a place where I could go, okay, this is my real job.
Yeah. Well, and who knew that? I'm sure writing the book was a huge piece of clout for you to be able to go. And this is just, I love the woo woo. So feel free to roll your eyes at me, but like things just happen in divine order. We do not see them. We do not understand them. They are often so painful and so slow, but you just got to ride the ride, Yeah.
Yeah. The book is really like the reason, I think, and I have 3 books now, but the reason that I can do this. Yeah, my trilogy is complete. And I wouldn't be able to do this without the books because they give me that, I've, especially early on, I don't need them as much anymore because I've been doing this for a decade, but early on, it wasn't just that I'd been a dementia care director, but that I had this book. And so I would watch people's faces change when I was talking to somebody, a decision maker, and they'd be like, yeah, sure, whatever. And then I'd be like, oh, my book with Johns Hopkins University Press. And they'd be like, Johns Hopkins? Huh? And suddenly they were like, oh, maybe I should take this young woman seriously, because at the time I was like 26, 27, 28, like, early days. I was in my 20s and looked even younger. And I think that was really tough to get the, get that clout and get that respect that I needed to like be able to get hired.
Without a doubt. And it's not even like you're consulting families around how do you care for someone with dementia? How do you make those transitional decisions? Right. You're going in to make major change in institutions.
Yeah.
And you're talking about everything, I'm sure, from like quality of care to interior design, and people are just like, I'm sorry, wait, what? Like, we are established. I'm just trying to keep the lights on. Like, but you're like, actually, I have something to say. I think it's so cool.
Yes. for a number of years, especially before like I don't know, my early 30s, I would be asked how old I was. So I would do like speaking events, and I had people coming up to me after the event who would be like, "Hey, great talk. How old are you?"
What does it matter?
It was so rude.
It's
And
so rude.
I realized that people weren't even listening to what I was saying because they were too busy trying to figure out my face and how it like equated with my resume.
Ugh.
Like almost like, well, I can't trust this woman because she looks like a kid.
Yeah.
So for a while, I would get on stage and be like, "All right, let me," I'd make it into a joke, but I'd say, um, just to get this out of the way, because sometimes it comes up. I am, 28 years old or whatever it was. I'm 28 and I'm originally from New Jersey. Because then I'd have people also trying to figure out where I was from based on my accent or
Oh my
lack
gosh.
thereof.
Yeah.
So I would just be like, this is how old I am and this is where I'm from. And so people didn't spend the entire time being like, how old is she and where is she from? Because I don't think that I don't think they were listening to what I was actually saying.
Which is so frustrating because that's all your
So
time,
annoying.
energy, and passion. So you're like, hey guys, we're just going to go ahead and address this. And then I need you to lock in because I actually have something to say.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, that a girl. That is so badass. Okay, so then how were you like, so you started gaining traction. Were you able to get into like, I don't know much about dementia care facilities. So we're
Sure.
just going to, I'm sure, I don't know if many people do listening either. So
Probably
we're all
not.
going to just be dumb, deaf, and blind together. So were you able to get into like larger care facilities? Are they like facilities that have multiple locations? Like who are you going for and how are you finally getting a foot in the door?
Originally, I was getting my foot in the door with LinkedIn, but as we talked about briefly earlier before this actual recording, LinkedIn really sucks now.
I don't know what it
So
is now.
it's really become like Facebook Lite. So
Yep.
it's not what it once was. But back in the day, 5+ years ago, LinkedIn was the bomb for getting
Yeah.
clients for me. So all of our clients really are B2B. They're all business to business.
Mhm.
And we, like I've done the math. I think it's 5% of my income comes from family caregivers, like people who buy stuff from our online store, like take a class with us or something. But
Okay.
primarily it's business to business. So what will happen most frequently is that a senior living company or a home care company who has a larger structure. So, for example, like most of our clients have, I'd say, average 10 buildings.
Okay.
So it's not like a huge, huge company, but my biggest client, based out of they're called Sonita Senior Living, and they were based out of Texas. They had like 60 buildings at the time that I worked with them. So it was a pretty large
Yeah.
company. Maybe it was more like 80. Most of our clients have between like 1 and 20-ish buildings. So we work with the C-suite to develop a branded program that we then roll out at all of their buildings. So we
Yeah.
say, okay, like, you guys have 10 buildings over the course of the next 6 months or 12 months, usually 12 if they're that big. We're going to speak with each building over Zoom for 5 weeks, tell them what we want them to buy, show them how we want them to educate the staff. We want them to use our online education platform. Here's what we're going to do. Here's what we're going to implement. Here's the interior design we're going to set up. And then we also go out to a lot of these buildings as well. So like during our 12 months, we
Visits.
have
Yeah.
4 trips. So we'll
Wow.
go, sometimes they're in different states,
Yeah.
right? So sometimes they're like in multiple states. And for some of our bigger clients, they're in like 5, 6, 7 different states. And
Damn.
so we'll pick a few places to visit because we can't see everybody.
Right. Right.
But we try to do as much as we can to like actually come out and meet with people.
I'm so curious about building a brand for dementia. So if I think
Mm-hmm.
about someone who thinks that the person that they love needs to probably transition into dementia care,
Mm-hmm.
what should they be looking for in a brand?
We would love to see a brand that actually caters to people living with cognitive impairments. So when you go to a company's website, if it just says, we have Alzheimer's and dementia care, that to me says we don't know what we're doing.
Mm,
Alzheimer's is the most common cause of dementia. So saying Alzheimer's and dementia is sort of a misnomer.
Interesting.
anyway.
Yeah.
And then if you go to their site and it's just like, we have specialized care, we have specialized training, we have this, what is it? What are you talking about? Like,
Yeah.
if they can't tell the family what it is that the residents are going to do all day, what kind of training the staff is getting, it probably really isn't happening.
Yeah.
So we want to help change that. We want to say, like, okay, here's exactly the type of training they're getting. Like, um, you know, list us on your website. Like, here's who they're talking to. Here's who their consultant is. A lot of our clients use this kind of ongoing as like a fractional operator. So they'll hire us for the initial consulting and then keep us on as fractional ops. So instead of hiring a full-time, like, you know, $150,000 plus role of having like a C-suite level decision maker
Yeah.
and plus benefits, they have us. And
Mhm.
we're not cheap, but we're cheaper than that.
Yeah, for
And
sure.
so if you don't need, like, if you don't have 100 buildings and you just need consulting help and you don't want to hire this whole role, like, we're a really good fit, for
Yeah,
that.
absolutely. So when we think about someone who, okay, what are the things we want those we love doing all day? Like, what are your recommendations?
Keeping people engaged and engaged in things that make sense for who they are and who they were, right? So
Oh,
we want things that
lovely.
meet them at their cognitive level, right? So we
Yeah.
don't want things that are going to frustrate them, but we don't want to give them, like, I see a lot of like fidget blankets. A fidget blanket is essentially like a blanket with stuff for people to like mess with. There's no
Yeah.
clear thing to do there.
Yeah.
So we love, for people in moderate or beyond stages, baby dolls and pets that look and feel real.
Mhm.
Introducing them to people living with dementia by saying, what do you think about this? Letting them tell us where their reality is and then embracing that reality. And in fact, we just recently had a couple web comics that we made go absolutely viral on our Instagram. We have one called Embracing Their Reality, which is my trademark phrase. And it has over 245,000 likes as of
Incredible.
yesterday.
Wow.
Yeah, it did much better than I mean, I thought it would do well. I thought it
Yeah.
would do like
Yeah.
10,000 likes well.
Yeah.
um, But, we want to embrace people's reality. We want to meet them where they are. We want to do what's true for them. And sometimes that means like providing them with programming that is like what they used to do. For example, like one of our client buildings has a gentleman who was like a maintenance director. And
Mhm.
so they give him maintenance, quote unquote, work to do. Like, he
Yeah.
shadows the real maintenance director and helps hand out products, in independent living.
Yeah.
He, can help clean baseboards and stuff like that. Like, he's working, and that brings him a lot of joy.
Gosh. So I'm almost thinking about like when is the sweet spot to introduce people into these types of environments? Because I think, the stigma is that that's kind of like their final step to where you no longer can care for them because there's safety concerns at this point, to the point where you can
Mm-hmm.
no longer manage, or aggression that you can no longer manage, or, whatever it may be. You have a full-time job and you can't stay home and make sure that they haven't left, kind of thing, right? Like, there's so many reasons to go into memory care. But I think about the maintenance man, and like, if
Yeah,
you waited until he was at the point where he was getting lost every day, he wouldn't have those experiences that bring him joy, and then make that new place feel his own so that he can progress in a way that probably feels more comfortable as he continues to progress, more towards the end of life. Is that,
100%,
yeah.
100%. Here's all my books, right? I've got my
Can we,
trilogy here.
yeah. Can we talk about the
So,
trilogy so
here's my
everyone can,
trilogy.
yeah.
So,
Yeah.
my first book is called When Someone You Know is Living in a Dementia Care Community.
Mm.
My second book is called Creative Engagement, which is programming and activities for people living with dementia at home and in community settings. And then my third book kind of replaced my first book, which is The Caregiver's Guide to Memory Care and Dementia Communities. These titles are kind of long. I did not come up with these titles. But they're very descriptive. So the ideal time for me to move somebody, and this is like sort of a ridiculous answer, but it's true. If you've been thinking about it, it's probably time.
Yeah.
Because a lot of people wait about 2 years too long. So there were
Yeah.
many times as a dementia care director myself that I would get a new resident and be like, oh, she would have done so well here like 2 years ago. Because to your point, Betsy, like, you know, this person would maybe have reached a point where they couldn't really engage so much anymore, and they couldn't benefit from the programming that I was providing. And I was like, oh, this person would be great like 2.5 years ago.
Yeah.
So yeah, usually it's earlier than people expect.
That's interesting. And then, I mean, I guess I wonder if the challenge is having the tough conversation to be like, I think you would benefit from this more than being at home, and kind of like getting everybody on board and knowing that their decision-making facilities are probably not where they used to be. I don't know. It's complicated. I'm sure you get plenty of people in your family's opinions. I don't know. You know, my father-in-law, he technically is my ex-father-in-law. So, but you know, that feels so weird to say because I love him just the same. I wasn't really hand in hand in that process, obviously, because that was for my ex-husband and his family to care for. So I didn't really like get an inside baseball view of like how many cooks are in the kitchen, how do you handle the situation. So I just hold empathy, but I can imagine that it's you know, you want to like, you feel like you owe it to them to keep them around as long as possible, but it's hard. It really is like to have the opportunity for one-on-one programming, you know, or programming that's at least tailored to as specific as possible to be able to sort of transition through other stages, you know, those final stages of your life. I mean, I always joke, I'm like, when I start to lose it, I was like, I want to have a pet and I want you to feed me chicken tenders and I'm just going to be so happy.
Yeah, I mean, even accepting help at home, like if you can't move them for whatever reason, getting a home care company to come in, just getting some help, and really the big thing is not explaining to the person living with dementia that they have dementia. So I call it the 3-prong approach to moving somebody.
Okay.
This is the opposite of saying something like, Mom, you have dementia, so the doctor said I can't take care of you at home anymore and I got to move you to this place and we're selling your house. So the opposite of that would be something like, Mom, the doctor wants to evaluate you for a couple of months for your high blood pressure at this building. That way, we're 1, blaming it on a third party.
Yep.
2, naming a short but undefined amount of time.
Yeah.
And 3, blaming it on something they can see, feel, or are aware of that is not their brain.
Yeah.
Right. So we're not saying like you have dementia and you have to, because like they're going to argue that all day.
Yeah.
Right. Like
I'm sure
I'm
that
fine. I
brings
can
a
take care
level
of
of
myself.
Yeah. And that would also bring like a level of fear where you start to not trust yourself. I mean, we all
100%.
struggle with that, even in our full capacity, right? Like that is sort of intrinsic to everyone's kind of challenges and where fear lies in all of us. But I'm sure it dials it right up when it's yeah. Oh, that's so hard.
Yeah.
Okay, this is very helpful. Before we transition into like being a total badass business owner, is there any other advice for caregivers, whether it be to care for themselves or to care for the loved ones with dementia, or even, and then I have a second question of how do you prevent dementia since you've studied it? I think those are last 2 nuggets that I would love to leave people with.
In terms of advice, I would say education, like educate yourself as much as possible. Good place to start. The Dementia by Day Instagram. We have tons of free stuff. We put out a freebie every month with information about a specific topic. So getting the right information, embracing the person's reality, avoiding those arguments, doing what's true for them is always the best thing that you can do. Prevention is a tough one because essentially the answer is not very exciting. It's the same for like almost any disease, which is like exercise, eating well, drinking water, sleeping, with the addition of engaging your brain. So not just like, getting sucked into rabbit holes of like scrolling on social media, which is really like slowly killing all of us, right?
Literally, yes.
But like learning something new if you care about that thing. So like teaching yourself chess if you freaking hate it is not going to go well because you're going to hate it every day and it's not going to help. But if, for example, like I've been teaching myself German on Duolingo for the last 5 years.
Cool.
Yeah, every day I do a little bit. Even when I was in the hospital having my son with preeclampsia, I would like open my eyes for 5 seconds, do some Duolingo, and pass
You're like,
back
I
out.
can't lose my streak.
I can't lose my streak. Pretty much. People are like, what are you talking about?
Don't worry about it. If you don't get it, you don't get it.
Yeah, like I have a long streak going here. So, you gotta do what you gotta do to keep that streak going.
Yep.
So if you like that, that's a great way to engage your brain, is like learning a new language, because that's really hard. And a lot of dementia care communication is like learning a new language, honestly, like teaching people how to embrace someone's reality.
Yeah.
Is really hard for people who have always heard, well, don't lie, but also don't not lie. And it's like, what does that mean? Right. So embracing someone's reality is, I think, easier for people to understand.
Absolutely. That's super interesting to like learn these new skills before you like quote unquote retire. First of all, are any of us ever going to retire? If all of us can do what we love and make a little money while we're doing it, I don't know. Retirement's, and we all kind of embrace reinventing ourselves. I don't know. That's a whole sidebar. I really love tangents and rabbit holes, but I'm going to lock in. But like learning new languages, when I think about like, so my father ran a company, is just an incredible businessman, but my parents also breed racehorses. And so he really locked in on that and the strategy behind it. And like, the racing and all that stuff, because he wanted to make sure that he was taking care of his mind post retirement, because I think we see a lot of people who retire and then it's sort of like, what do you do with all this mind stimulation, et cetera? But I like the idea of sort of planting those skills prior to that age or retirement or whatever, to be like, no, I actually enjoy learning new things or something like that. That's very cool. I was thinking like, no, you just wait till you're 70, but no, we should do this a little before.
Always, if you can start early with these things, and also just like setting up the habit,
yeah,
you're trying to keep a 5-year streak of Duolingo going, starting that habit and like making it so that if you don't do it, you feel like compelled. Yeah. Right. To keep doing it.
Deeply compelled. This is amazing.
Yes.
Okay. So first of all, thank you for going on this sort of journey with me and making sure that our community feels a little bit supported in the dementia care world, because I just watching from afar, I know how hard it is. So I really appreciate that. And I'm so grateful for the work that you do, for like the love and care that you have for those who are elder. So often, our focus on the younger generation. So I'm really grateful for the work that you do.
Thanks.
And then props to being a total badass and having something really shitty that happened to you about getting laid off and being like, you know what, this is my, yes, that door closed, but this is my open door to make it my own.
Yes.
And to, leverage the resources that you had to start your business. So now fast forward 10 years later, you have you have a healthy book of business. You are doing your thing. You have written the trilogy. Now I've seen you transition into a newer space where really you want to talk about more about all the business knowledge that you've gained over time, and tell us how you want to serve the community in that way.
I really would love to have my 4th book come out, which is written in draft, about business. And really it's a business memoir with, a side of humor and a lot of lessons that I wish that I had known early on, because it was very hard for me to find anybody who specialized in business to business consulting. A lot of what I found was B2C or business to very small business. So someone saying, okay, here's how to work with one person who's starting a business, or fellow entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
But I really have almost yet to find anybody talking about how to be a small business and work with much bigger businesses. Obviously there are many consultants out there. I just haven't really found that accessible in a book or whatever. I haven't seen a whole lot of that, especially as a very small female owned business. So my book is currently titled, my podcast is titled, I Can't Hustle Any Harder Than This. And just trying to build, a brand around this other stuff that I know, and that isn't just dementia, because I have a business, a successful business. It just happens to be about dementia care. And so I'm sort of I've gotten kind of pigeonholed into only doing dementia stuff. And I'd
Mhm.
like to like expand my horizons a little bit.
Yes, 1,000 yeses. One of my first podcast guests is a dear friend of mine, and we both kind of grew up in the running up the ranks in the corporate marketing and advertising world. And we talked a lot about how women are like, I said I was going to do this, so I'm going to do this. And
Mm-hmm.
making pivots or expanding horizons or rebranding yourself feels absolutely terrifying because you're like, I am loved and accepted and valuable in this space, but there is more to me, or there is a
Yeah.
new version of me. And I think women especially are too afraid to be like, okay, now I'm going to tell you. And so I'm so pumped for you that you're like, no, there's more to me. I'm so like, you're like, I love this lane, but there's more to me than that. So I think this is incredible. And I can't hustle any harder is like, for every corporate person out there who is then thinking about transitioning, for every entrepreneur who thinks that they have to do it all themselves, who thinks that like money only comes in based on output out, like I think that that is such a gift because hustle culture is just about killing all of us, especially women, because we are built differently.
Yes, absolutely. I just recently interviewed Stephanie O'Connell on my podcast, and that episode will be out soon-ish. And she talks a lot about, women and work and feminism and how women do feel compelled to like just do everything and how hustle culture really hurts women in particular,
Mhm.
and kind of pigeonholes us. I mean, when I was pitching my book for the first round of pitches, I had an interested agent and I was like, yes, I've got somebody already. We had a call, it was amazing. And then she was like, okay, I'm going to go talk to my boss and I'm going to come back and, let you know what he thinks. But when she came back to me, she was like, hey, I talked to my boss and he had a really good idea. And I'm like, okay, great. What is it? She says, well, he was thinking, you already have this dementia expertise. What if instead of a funny book about business, you wrote a funny book about dementia? And I said, what's that now? She's like, what if I said, first of all, and I was like trying to not convey how angry I was, but I was like, that's really offensive.
Mm.
First of all, so no, and second of all, no, and third of all, I don't it. I don't have another dementia book in me, and certainly not a humorous one.
Yeah.
Um, like there are humorous anecdotes in my books because there are real stories and real stories can be humorous, but
Sure.
we're never punching down. We're never laughing at somebody for having a cognitive impairment. And that's sort of what I was being pitched and I was livid. um and I was like, I don't need an agent to pitch Johns Hopkins. Johns Hopkins has published three of my books. They know I can write about dementia, right? I'm sure if
Right.
I was like, hey guys, I have another good idea about a dementia book, they'd be like, sure, let's talk about it. um she's like, well, but you're a dementia expert. I'm like, yes, but I'm also an expert in business. It just happens to be a business about dementia.
Yep.
And that was like not computing. So I was essentially like, all right, I guess I'm back to like square zero on this.
Yeah, but good for you for not being like, I just really want to get another book out. You're like, no,
No,
just,
no.
yeah. First of all, I
It's
do
got to
not
be about,
align.
oh,
Yeah. Oh, I
oh.
love that. We do not punch down.
Don't punch down. I mean, like,
We
it's
do not
not,
punch down.
her example was like, well, I worked with an author who was terminally ill and she wrote a funny book about being terminally ill. And I said, yes, she wrote it about herself.
Self. Yeah.
Like, if
That's
I was
very
living with
different.
dementia and I wrote a book about living with dementia and I was like, hey, this sucks, but also here's some funny stuff, that would be fine. But I'm
Mhm.
not going to be, from a consultant standpoint, from a third party standpoint, be like, no. Yeah.
No,
Also, I said,
absolutely.
not to mention, I'm not trying to endanger my current income stream and lifestyle and like business that I've built from nothing by upsetting my client base, with a book that's essentially like, hey, I know I said all this professional good advice about dementia care, but I'm going to destroy it now by like making a funny book about no.
Right.
Yeah, I was just very, very turned off by that whole conversation. And I was like, all right,
And like,
back to the drawing board.
thank God you have had enough experience in your life that you aren't so many people. And I'm a recovering person of this, so I can say this, have tied our worth to our output. And so it's
Sure.
like, whatever, man, I'm just going to feel good about myself if I get another book out. Or
Sure.
if I'm, maybe it'll bring a whole new set of followers and I don't know, whatever. But like, you were like, absolutely not. That does not align with my values or my growth, or literally just no. So thanks. When you, when you think about this notion of can't hustle any harder, what are kind of like your big watch outs? Like, I know we've talked about off camera, like working for free, referrals, getting the wrong coach. My other favorite is the death trap of passive income. Like, I know we've got to get you off air here in a couple of minutes, but what are your favorite like watch outs that you want to make sure that you get to highlight to women?
The big thing, I think, especially as women, I really think, especially if we're on the younger side, and I was, targeted for this, being pitched like working for free, or working for quote unquote like a referral, or working for quote unquote exposure. And early on in my business, I would say yes to stuff that I really shouldn't have said yes to.
Well,
like,
it's so hard to know, isn't it? When you're
it's
so
so
young.
hard to know, and you're young, and you're like, and even beyond being young, I was just like, oh, maybe this will lead to something else. I should say yes to it.
You're
And
absolutely right.
I just said yes to so much stupid stuff. So much stupid stuff that brought in goose egg, zero business. And I got to a point where I was like, all right, I need to like really protect myself and my calendar and my time and start saying no to things on the reg.
Yep.
Yeah. I probably the moment this really hit for me, I had a guy reach out and say, hey, we connect. We actually met in person at a networking event. And he was like, oh, my building's like 20 minutes from you. We're consulting there. Would you come out and we'll pay your consulting fee, and, you can talk with us. And I was like, great. I usually do this over Zoom and collect payment ahead of time, but, I'll do you guys a favor, since you're like 20 minutes away. I'll come and collect payment at your location and we'll do this. And I'm assuming you probably guess where this is going, which is that I arrived, and this guy who had quoted my number to me over the phone pretended like he had no idea that he was that I was going to get paid. I showed up there and I was ready to work, and he was like, I was like, okay, so before we get going, let me just go ahead and take your credit card, and then we can walk around the building. We can talk, we're going to sit down for our like hour and a half plus long meeting. And he was like, why don't we just do the walk around first? And my heart sank, and I was like, this dude is trying to pull a fast one. And I was like, no, let's go ahead and collect that card. And he just is like ignoring me and starts talking about the building again. And I said, hold on. And he was like, oh, well, let me go get my business partner. So he brings this woman in, and I don't even know if this was really her fault, because I genuinely think she knew nothing of his little scheme. And she comes in and she's like, wait, he's saying we have to pay you for what? And I was like,
I gotta go.
And I closed my laptop, and I'm very proud of myself for doing this. And I closed my laptop and I said, you know what? This is why I don't do this. This is why I don't do this. And I got my stuff and I walked out. And I remember going to my car, and I just like sat in my car, cried for like 5 minutes, because I was like, I'm so angry. I'm so angry that this happened. And I was angry at myself for kind of breaking my own rule.
But like we are all human doing the humaning, and you're like, yes, we talked about it. We're good.
We talked
I
about it. We're good.
also like, so in my coaching experience, one of the things that is a reoccurring theme is that, and I even fall for this, it's so hard, first of all, to figure out your own price. We all struggle with price connected to value, connected to worth, let alone having to then ask for said price. And
Ooh,
then having to set the boundary multiple times. Like I have a little bit of throw up in my mouth when you tell that story.
it's
Like
so,
that's
ooh,
horrible.
yeah.
This is like a woman's worst nightmare. I don't mean to generalize, but from the conversations I've had, yeah. So, okay. Well, I'm obsessed with that perspective. Don't do anything for free. Trust your instincts, boundary up, set your price, and know your worth.
Yes. Yes. And, don't break your own rules. Like, don't break your own boundaries. So you set it for a reason, and
Good
don't for
point.
1 second think like, you know what, this person seems like a good person. They're not going to take advantage of me. Even if they don't, every inch that you give, if you
Mhm.
run into somebody who wants to take that inch and, go a mile with it, they're going to go a mile with it. And that was this dude. So I've run into some version of that many times. It's gotten better and better because I've gotten much better at saying, no, that's not what we do.
Yeah.
You can go find somebody else,
Right. Good luck.
who's gonna
Yeah.
do that. Um, Unfortunately.
Yeah, God, I was just listening. This is a little bit of a tangent, but related. I was just listening to an interview of Jewel, and she's got like an incredible story. And
Mm,
so she was saying that as she was kind of like writing her own music and starting to get discovered, of course, people were like, well, if you sleep with me, like whatever. And she was like, I actually like, then I'll make sure to get you your paycheck. Then I'll make sure whatever. And she was like, I am just fine broke. So, like,
yep.
even if you're so hungry for the sale, if it is outside your structure or your values, you are just fine broke. That's not the door you're meant to go through. Just
Mm-mm.
trust yourself. Because every time we stop trusting ourselves and go for some sort of external validation, it takes that much longer to unwind.
100%.
I love this
100%.
advice. Okay. I know that that really like that also ties into like referrals and be like, well, if you do this for free, then I'll refer, all of this sort
It's
of.
the same nonsense. It's the same game of like, oh, just somebody trying to um move your boundary to be like, let me see what I can get from
Mhm.
this. What can I get for free?
Yeah.
And in the beginning of your business, the answer is a whole bunch of stuff because I don't know any better, right? Or I really need this business. But I have generally found that the more desperate you are for business, one, people can smell it on you,
Yeah.
and two, you're more likely to just be like, oh, sure, sure. And it just never pays off. It never pays off ever.
I 1,000 yeses, because even if it is the yes that you wanted, it's not the right kind.
No, it never is.
Okay. I want to be really cognizant of your time because I know you have another thing to head to, but when you get that book out into the universe, will you come back?
Of course, of
I,
course. I'll
I
come
will.
back before that. I feel like we can have this
Yes,
conversation many times,
please.
and you're coming on my show
I can't wait. Yep.
in a few weeks. So that'll be awesome. Yeah.
It's going to be so good. Okay. This is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
I love it.
I really loved hearing your story. And again, thank you for your flexibility
Of
and
course.
being able to just kind of jump between subjects. I really, really appreciate that.
Yeah.
And I think it really served our audience today. And I like now that I'm like, I wish we had 4 more hours because I could
I
just talk about these
know.
stories all day long, but we'll book more time.
I love it.
Awesome. Okay, Rachel, thank you. Everyone who
Thank
is
you.
listening, go check out the trilogy. And also go check out Can't Hustle Any Harder on Instagram. There's an amazing show. I can't wait to be on it in November. It is November in a couple
It
of
is
weeks.
November.
I
Gosh.
know, like, oh Lord. And I think I'm coming on like right before my birthday. So
Yeah,
we'll bring
nice.
birthday vibes. And it's going to be great. So everyone go check out her content and all the places that it exists. Rachel, is there any other place that we can find you that we haven't talked about?
Substack. I'm trying to beef up
Yes,
my Substack.
let's do it.
Yeah. So you can just look up Rachel Wonderland on Substack. My thing is called my account, I don't know, is called Hustle Not Hustled right now.
Love
So,
it.
it may evolve, but if you
Yeah.
look up Rachel Wonderland, rachelwonderland.com. You'll find me, and all my stuff is there.
Awesome. Awesome. I love your perspective. All right, you guys, let's let Rachel get on to the rest of her day. But thank you everyone for listening, and we'll catch you next time.
Thank you.
Well, that's the end of this episode, but promise me, you won't stop here with whatever it is you're feeling or dreaming about. I hope you leave today feeling empowered to live life just as you see fit. If this podcast was helpful to you, it would mean the world to me if you could leave a review on whatever platform you're listening on. I genuinely just want to help women live the life they dream about. So if this type of content tracks with you, subscribe to this podcast or visit our website, writeyourownsstory.co, to download digital courses or to grab a journal and a mug to just dream in and dream with. It's your life, lady. Do you. And just remember, I'm rooting for you, and you've totally got this.